Good morning, Wrestling Inc. Get up, get going. Happy Thursday. I hope you are thirsty for some pro wrestling punditry. It is me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, joined here as I am every Thursday to talk the pro wrestling news of the day. It's Paul Pratt, a.k.a. Polio Del Mar. Paul, welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
Oh, always good to be here. Always good to talk about some wrestling.
Yeah, we got a lot of wrestling to get into here today. A lot breaking in the past 24 hours. I'm here. You're here. We have a lot of people I see already in the comment section here, which you could jump in and join right now, like MCask PDO64. So was Nick late to his own wedding? I'm not married, but I get it. We were 2 minutes late here this morning. I apologize.
Y'all, it was not me. I was messaging him, where are you?
Nope. It was solely because my coffee... I had to refill the water in the side of it and then start the coffee over. And so this one's on me. I screwed the pooch. Apologize for that. I apologize for that one.
He did not appreciate that reference.
Wow, actual dog in the shot after the screwed the pooch reference. Sorry. I got to stop using that phrase too. That's a little too red. It's one of the last like real rednecky colloquialisms left in my vernacular, Paul.
Well, you know, you can take the boy out of Texas.
Can't take the boy out of that. Never mind. I'm not going to go there. That was a bad joke. All right. Hey, we got a lot of time. We got a lot of stuff to get to here in a short amount of time. We have Dave in here saying Jasper, right? That's
yeah.
The
dog is over, Nick. I'm telling you, the dog is over.
Yeah. Well, the dog Jasper's an adorable dog. I wish Willow was as outgoing or would sit in my lap for prolonged periods of time. I'm going to try again. I don't think Willow's been on the daily yet. I'll try to get Willow on at the end of the show. If I can remember. So also here we have from dudes at ringside. Yo, Nick, what's going on? Well, let me tell you, dude, we got a lot going on here. Besides the news we're going to talk about here in just a second. After the news, if you're listening in audio form, we are going to be welcoming back a friend of the show and a friend of the show, Renee Paquette, back in the house. She's joined by Misha Tate. They have a new show on SiriusXM Fight Nation that you can check out every Monday. Yep. We dive into that. But Renee, in this interview, this is not a spoiler because we already put it up on the site yesterday. I followed up on your interview with Renee, Paul.
Yep.
Where when Polio asked Renee about her non-compete, she said it was up very shortly. I said Renee is shortly over, and she confirms in this interview here that went viral yesterday. She's free and clear. She is done with her WWE non-compete.
Yep.
She can show up in AEW if she wants. I mean, a real cool, crazy time for Renee now.
I'm assuming that because her non-compete and some other things are free, puts her in the free and clear. That's why she's with Sirius all of a sudden. You know what I mean? It's a timed because she is free and clear.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, by the way, that are just listening in audio form, we do go live with the video every day, Monday through Friday at noon Eastern. So if you want to join us live for the recording of the video, jump on in. But yeah, if you're in audio form, you're going to get Renee and Misha here in a little bit. And if you're watching us in video form, you're going to get Renee and Misha. The premiere is happening in 55 minutes on Wrestling Inc.'s YouTube channel. Highly recommend tuning in. Really, really great conversation. And at the end of the show, for everybody, we'll dive to the mailbag. We're going to look at who you all would like to see Bray Wyatt feud with in AEW, if that's where he winds up. And that'll bring us right into news you can use. News will leave a bruise, which is about Bray Wyatt. So Wyatt tweeted out the following yesterday. He said, everything will be clear. I'll see you all very soon. Revenge is a confession of pain. You've never seen the real me. Now, as reported earlier, Wyatt is expected to debut with AEW soon, potentially as early as the September 29th edition of Dynamite in Rochester, which is the home of Brody Lee. So any thoughts on the latest tease here from Bray Wyatt, Paul?
Well, you know, I'm really excited to see what is next for Bray Wyatt. I think that, quite frankly, for me, he proved to be one of the most intriguing characters of the last several years in WWE programming. I don't think he ever got a completely fair shake there, and I would love to see what comes of his career going forward. The one thing I will say is where I have trepidation is we've seen companies in the past try to capitalize on particularly unusual characters. Like I think about Dustin Rhodes when he became Seven and other characters, you know, that like this try to capitalize on the success that he had in WWE, and those were terrible. Black Rain and Impact, terrible. So, you know, it's hard for other companies sometimes to capitalize on that kind of mysticism or quirky thing that the WWE tends to do somewhat well in some cases. But with Bray Wyatt, if they allow him to direct it, I think he's going to be very successful.
I had totally forgot about 7 there. You know, sometimes I just forget about 7. I don't think we're going to get a 7 here. I think we're going to get a 10. I think we're going to get like Bray Wyatt getting to be what Bray Wyatt wants to be. I thought because the last line I read there, "You've never seen the real me," was in response to a fan who was like, "I can't wait to see you." So I'm wondering, you know, how much was left on the cutting room floor with this guy at WWE? What is this iteration of himself that he obviously seemed to be like kind of building to, teasing, that we didn't see? I mean, I'm pretty sure the guy owns all his own masks and costumes and stuff like that. He was working with Savini out in Pittsburgh, I believe, on his mask stuff. So I'm very intrigued to see what kind of variation we get of him when he comes back.
One of the things I think that's great about him is we've already seen him play 3 different characters, and each one of them was done impeccably. And I think that a lot of those came from his own mind, and I think that there's probably a lot more there. He's somebody that I think is more than capable, for example, of guiding his own creative in a way that would be very unique and very different. So I'm looking forward to seeing what may come of him if he's kind of unthrottled, unhindered by having to go through a lot of different layers of acceptance to get final approval to go on TV with it.
Yeah, and the last line here, and again, maybe I'm reading way too much into the tea leaves, but the "revenge is a confession of pain" line, to me, reads like I'm not looking to go out of my way to take shots at WWE. I could be wrong, but that just seems like when I think revenge, I think recently released talent. I think trying to go in on your former employer. I think what maybe, again, he's trying to say is a confession of I'm very much hurting, which I use as a way to tie into the last Bray Wyatt note here before we get to some Dynamite stuff. He wrote yesterday, "I am late on this and I wasn't there, but Big E is the type of dude that the boys line up to congratulate. It's a real good look." He tweeted that before he tweeted the next thing, and that's why I feel like maybe some kind of tie between those two things. I don't know if you think I've just got my tinfoil hat on too tightly there.
I mean, I don't know. It's Bray Wyatt. They could be completely unrelated. They could all be somehow interrelated. I feel like what that really was just a tip of the hat to the fact that Big E is somebody that is well respected and admired in the dressing room, and in light of all the negativity that's been coming WWE's way of late, putting the belt on somebody who is beloved in the locker room probably will go a long way to kind of ease some of that, distrust or mistrust that's placed there.
So dude at ringside saying Bray's going to face Cody. We haven't even
Everybody faces Cody.
We haven't got to the mailbag yet. Braddock here with a comment that's not about if we're going to have unique sets at pay-per-views anymore. And by the way, Braddock, would love your thoughts on the new NXT set. Like, let's hear it, man. Jump in the comment section. But he says, love to see Wyndham Rotunda, which is, I guess, the name everybody backstage called Bray Wyatt. They just call him Wyndham. So,
isn't that his name?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Is that his actual first name? Is Wyndham?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never looked into it. Really?
Yeah.
It's the family. Okay. It's a really, really wrestling name. That's a super wrestling name.
I mean, it was, it was that's his real, as far as I know, that's his real name.
Is it? I've never really thought about what Bray Wyatt's real name is. I knew he was a Rotunda. Wyndham Rotunda. That's a very wrestling name right there. Anyway, we
he's,
what?
Like his mom was a Wyndham, his dad's a Rotunda.
Okay. I don't know enough about Bray's genealogy. I guess I should probably dig deeper into it. Wyndham Rotunda. I like the name. I didn't know that was. I thought it was just like a thing people called him in relation to the family or something like that.
Well, that his mom is Barry Wyndham's sister.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yes.
That is Mike Rotunda.
Okay. But again, all right. Anyway, this is bad air. But I was confused. I didn't know his name was Wyndham. I apologize.
I'm pretty sure that's his actual given name.
Okay. Well, I'm sure the comment section is going to let us know here pretty soon. We also have here from Eric Roberts. There's no way he doesn't get a face pop. I think Bray Malachi is the push they need to make Malachi get booed. I don't get the vibe they want Malachi. I mean, like, is he supposed to be getting booed? Because his entrance is badass, dude.
Yeah, but I think that they expected him to get booed against Cody. I think that they over anticipate people's love for Cody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we'll talk more about Cody here in just a second. We have Daniel Price. Wyatt's no compete isn't up till next month anyway, so you're going to have to wait. But that's like, we're getting conflicting reports right now, Daniel. And I think that's kind of the fun of this period of time, is not really knowing all of the details of when contracts are coming up. A lot of these guys renegotiated with WWE before the pandemic for a variety of reasons. So something could have changed, right? But yeah, I think he very well could be in Rochester. Let's see here. Anything else? We have Wyndham Rotunda. This is the Hot Tag Wrestling Podcast. Wyndham Rotunda is a next level creative mind. I would be shocked if he didn't already have a gimmick made up for AEW if he had a feeling WWE was going to release him. I don't think he knew. Maybe I'm wrong. I got the vibe he didn't really know he was going to get released.
I don't think he had a vibe that he was getting released. I don't think most people had a vibe he was getting released.
Yeah, well, I get the vibe that it came very suddenly, because when I was at SummerSlam weekend, there was a whole lot of Bray Wyatt merchandise and belts and stuff that they had for sale. And I don't know why you would stockpile all that inventory if you were going to be getting rid of this guy.
Maybe there was so much available because they were trying to get rid of it.
And then we have here, we'll say Bryan Bills. I think most people brought in who are underutilized at WWE are going to get cheered. And like, that was the thing as we move into AEW Dynamite here. Man, everybody's over in AEW. Like, there's not outside of like maybe MJF, Sean Spears. Is he a top 5 heel in AEW at the moment? Maybe Taz. Like, him and Hobbs and Hook seem to get some heat with Punk, but thin on heels over at AEW. Everybody's beloved over there at the moment.
Well, that's the thing. I think that AEW fans are a little bit different because they love the talent. You know what I mean? It's very different. It's hard to get people over there because it seems like they appreciate different things. You know, like they appreciate people for different, whether that's their in-ring talent or the fact that they're suddenly going to be utilized after being seen as underutilized for years. Whatever it is, they appreciate the talent in a different way.
Yeah, and I was watching last night looking at just kind of the talent that's there, because it's all happened so fast. You know, it was interesting to me, like towards the waning days of WCW, how the talent that left WCW for WWE was like the workhorse talent, right? Remember the Radicals coming in, and like there weren't a whole lot, like we didn't see Goldberg till after like the company was gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that in reverse right now. It's like the opposite of what happened at that period of time.
Well, I will say that one of the things that we've expressed repeatedly here is like my concern about where do people who have been on the roster in AEW go with this large influx of talent coming from WWE. And one of the things I've been pleasantly surprised, and it has kind of calmed my concerns a little bit, is that as these people are coming in, they're being slotted into various programs with people who need to be developed from AEW, and they're going to, you know, it seems like they're, as opposed to just coming in this big lump at the top of the card, they're coming in and dispersing. Even people like Punk going into an obvious program with Team Taz, which, you know, I would not say that Team Taz has been at the forefront of any of their programming for a while. So this is something that's actually going to really elevate individuals within Team Taz, specifically Willie Hobbs. I'm very excited to see him go into a program. And of course, we know he's going to lose, but, you know, just the sheer fact that he's going to get to go in there and look great and get several weeks of that kind of shine and rub is going to be great.
Well, MCASP here, Hook is over, right? I mean, we're all talking about Will Hobbs here, but Hook has gear. Did you see him in his gear in the promo like graphic they put out?
Yeah. So the Hook is over. There's a whole army of hookers who just love him.
Yeah, those hookers love Hook. They love them some Hook. Those hookers out there.
The hookers, yes, indeed.
But they are the final level bosses before Punk eventually gets Ricky Starks, who I think at this point probably has a pretty good chance of maybe actually he might be the one to beat Punk, give Punk his first loss.
I would love that because, what we're seeing is that at some point, right? Like, I know that there's going to be two sides to this coin. People are going to come in, say, oh, you brought these people from WWE in, and, they're either beating everyone, or you bring them in and they lose too soon or whatever to lose their shine. I don't think that a loss for any of these people is going to, do any harm to their reputation. They've already been established. The people that they've got now tend to be fairly major superstars. And the idea of professional wrestling is that people have to trade victories. So if you're going to bring them in and they're going to develop your homegrown talent at all, eventually your talent has to start to be able to compete at the same level to be seen as at the same level.
All right. Well, that is true of Punk, who in this situation, I'm like, if you'd have given me the guys that were coming in that I thought were going to just go out of their way to just work solely with young talent, I don't know that I would have necessarily pegged Punk as that guy, because the other side of the coin here, Daniel Bryan, Adam Cole, these guys are jumping right into like the guys that are already decidedly over in AEW that don't really need the rub as much as like I'm not trying to diminish what we're going to get next week, which is the AEW World Title match between Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson. But the only people in that program right now, because you got Adam Cole in the wings that's like young and getting over here, is like Jungle Boy, maybe Luchasaurus. Cage is Christian Cage. Marco Stunt is a cheerleader at this point. It's very interesting to me how those guys are all working together, unlike kind of what Punk is doing with Team Taz.
I think that there's some reasons for that. Like, in my opinion, I think that they're bringing Daniel Bryan in because he's the one who's been most recently on WWE television. So they're putting him in a focal point, so people will jump over with him to watch that. I think that also because that presents an immediate dream match, and it also is going to buy them time to build towards eventually seeing Punk, go through the ranks and come up for that title shot.
And I mean, next they're going to put this title on Bryan next week, right?
I don't know that.
You don't think? I think it's a given. I think Bryan Danielson takes this title next Wednesday night on Dynamite from Kenny Omega. Huge main event, 40 minutes long, and it's a big moment for AEW. I think that's why the Adam Page stuff didn't come together, and they went with Christian just because they were like, oh, we've changed plans. We don't want Page to have this title when Danielson comes in.
I mean, maybe so. That's very possible.
Wait, is this non-title next week?
No, it's for the title.
Yeah, I'm fair. I have a bunch of people in here in the comment section telling me that this is not for the title.
I could have sworn they said it multiple times last night that it was for the title.
Let's see here. Official for AEW. Okay. Bryan insulted Callis. He then explained to Omega that this isn't about the world championship at this time. He just wants to have a match to see who's the better of the two. So it's not for the title.
Oh, well, if it's not for the title, then Bryan Danielson definitely goes over.
What? This is not for the title?
I legitimately thought that it was for the title.
I also did too. Bobby Burns, it's a non-title match, Hosman. Keep up. I mean, come on. He's got Bobby Burns there right now. I feel bad. I watched the whole show this morning. I didn't fast forward through any of it. I watched the whole show.
I watched the whole show last night, and I thought I left it thinking it was a title match.
Well, all right. Well, still a bit. Why would you do? Now I don't know. Like, why would you do this not for the title?
Because of the fact that you want Bryan Danielson to go over on TV and your main event of your show and bring those fans over, and you still want to protect your champion.
That's weird. Super weird. By like the standards of what AEW does, it's just weird because like a hollow victory there with Bryan beating Kenny, not for the title. I don't know. I don't know how
it's hollow though. Is it hollow?
It's a little hollow. I mean, I think you want because what are you gonna do? Have him beat him again later and expect the same pop? Like,
no, I don't think he's gonna beat him later. I think he beats him now and then they hold it out and he loses to Omega when the title's on the line.
Oh, this is so weird.
Kenny Omega, when under pressure, is the best in the world.
Oh man, dudes at ringside. I'm mad it's non-title, right? Oh wait, this is all moving too fast here. I'm mad it's not title. Yeah, I'm also a little salty now. I don't know. I mean, we're gonna get a lot next Wednesday, and it'll still be a great match. But I just feel like with AEW, they've done such a good job of giving you everything that you want here recently. It's weird for them to only kind of give you half.
So, one of the things I wanted to comment on, and it wasn't really on our run sheet, is watching AEW last night. The thing that I took away from that broadcast the most is how well they are doing to program, not just for Wednesday nights, but on Friday nights as well. They were giving you preview packages, promo packages, really big matches. They are building this entire franchise, and it's the one thing that stood out to me, because wrestling or stories or characters aside, when you compare WWE to AEW, that's a wash. It's up to you as to whether or not you like one better than the other. I think you'd be nuts to like one better than the other, but at the same time, one of the things that is severely lacking is any kind of continuity of pushing a story from one show to the next, or even making like a build of anticipation for what is to come. Like if you're not watching, one of those programs, you don't always even know what's happening on the other one sometimes. You know what I mean? It's like they're not cross-promoting the way they could. And that's something that AEW was doing stellar last night, in addition to mentioning Elevation and Dark and all these things. It was very well done.
Yeah, I thought so too. And Mick Foley pointed this out like a couple weeks ago when I had him on Waltman's podcast about, after he did the WWE Have a Problem thing, is, he talks, because he talks about how often WWE takes the, line and puts it through the script an hour before showtime, and how hard it is for WWE to do exactly what you're talking about because of that, like,
of course.
Yeah. And so it just leaves this big hole, and it's nothing I'd really ever thought too hard about. But you're absolutely right. The way they set up matches, you're always getting excited for what you're about to see and what's coming next out of it into the next show. And
absolutely. Yeah. And and it's another thing also that AEW, by not having all these different brands or whatever, I get it. Like WWE wants to program different looks, different feels, different stories for different nights, but AEW has done an incredibly good job of taking these YouTube series like Elevation and Dark and weaving them through the tapestry of Dynamite as well as Rampage. And it really does make, to some degree, things that happen on Dark or Elevation seem important in the context of what's happening on Dynamite.
Mm-hmm. Well, Iron Med's here as we wrap up on Omega Danielson, saying it's going to be the first 100-star match by Dave Meltzer.
I just had to preempt myself from saying something really scandalous.
It's fine. It's fine. It's good that we know where the line is, Paul. That's nice. Sometimes. All right. Dynamite here. Moving on with more coming out of Dynamite. Cody Rhodes back in AEW. He returned after Malachi Black came to the ring alone in an all-black hooded robe. He pointed out that popular actress Rosario Dawson was in the crowd. She's a co-host on the Go Big show with Cody Rhodes. She was wearing the Nightmare Family jacket. This inspired Rosario to enter the outer part of the ring to confront Black face-to-face. Cody then appeared from the entrance of an arena stairwell, began to beeline for Malachi, and while distracted, Rosario hopped on Malachi Black's back, kept it busy until Cody could strike, and then the two men battled throughout the arena. How do you feel they used in Rosario Dawson here? What'd you think about this segment, Paul?
This segment, there was a lot of things about this that I whatever, I think that I think it's great that they've got this mainstream actress who got involved in this. I'm sure maybe it'll get picked up by a few media outlets. We like that. We love the cross promotional element of the Go Big show. But there was, I was just irritated because I was really enjoying Cody's retirement. He teases retirement just so he can be gone for maybe 3-4 weeks, maybe 5 at most. But the other part that was killing me is during the commentary when they were fighting at the steps, they made this big deal out of that. Both of these men are wearing dress shoes. They could slip at any moment and tumble down these stairs. These bloodthirsty fans would love that. So would we. Basically, I know I just acted it out, but it was absurd.
Yeah, I just thought that Black looked a little goofy here. You know, like he's such an imposing kind of Undertaker type character. He's been presented so dominantly, so ruthlessly, and to watch him kind of like have to try to throw Rosario Dawson off of his back, you know, I just looked a little goofy to me. You know, I also see here for Braddock, I hope Black beats Cody next week. I don't think that's going to happen, Paul.
It's not going to happen.
No.
Guaranteed. Cody comes back from his retirement and he's going over. That you have to know how Cody books. He puts somebody over and then he comes back and he destroys it.
Right. And I wonder what happens to Black after he's done with Cody. Like after you get through Cody, like you're kind of more open and like hopefully find momentum or hopefully or maybe you do not. I'm interested to see what happens to Black on the other side of the Cody feud. It is undeniable. That guy has the best entrance in all of AEW and mystique and everything. And once he's moved past Cody, I hope there's something there for him, but we'll see, you know.
The interesting thing I'll tell you coming out of months of attending AEW Dynamite live broadcasts in Jacksonville, there's exactly one major entrance in all of AEW. And that's generally speaking, Cody Rhodes. He's the only one who has he enters from the center, the big mwah. Malachi Black is the first person who rivals that. Mm-hmm. That entrance, the entrance alone is money. It's great. He comes in, I love the new mask that he's wearing. It's kind of gives it extra mystique. I was very intrigued. Like the bruise around his eye is getting bigger. I'm wondering if by the time he meets Cody, it's going to be like half his head.
Sure. Well, that's like he said. It's like an infection. It's like some kind of entity that's taking over his eye.
Malignancy. Yeah.
Malignancy. Okay. We also have here Dave in Cody's winning for America, as always.
Always.
We have Daniel Price. If Wyatt shows up next month, I've got a 20 that says he feuds with Black. We'll find out. I don't know. We'll talk about it in the mailbag. And then also coming out of Dynamite last night, we had a couple like inside baseball comments on the microphones last night, Paul. So unique for AEW. So I was surprised by the deliver of this first one. This one came from Christian to Adam Cole. He said, "I'm just thinking here, but I don't know, Adam. Adam does have some pretty good friends. You know what I mean? The super elite, they use their EVP status to throw him a lifeline, drag his sorry ass out of developmental. Here's the thing, Adam. We accept your challenge. And you know what? Since you're used to losing the Wednesday night wars, you better add Friday to that list as well." How do you feel about Christian dropping some inside baseball talk on old Adam Cole here?
I popped for those. I thought it was very well done. I thought it was clever. I thought that, I think that, I think that it gives added heat to something that, didn't necessarily, it helps to heat that up. But I also think that it's real talk. People who are watching are aware that this is reality. And at least in that element is, and I think that it gives that insider cheeky element that people who are fans of AEW love.
Yeah, I'm glad they went this route too. I'm with you. And the Wednesday Night War being what it was, Adam Cole was the centerpiece of NXT.
Absolutely was.
And you got to, I think, calling out the elephant in that room, building that kind of tension. I almost feel like I want to see him go further with it. I don't quite know exactly what that looks like. I think you need to have another couple NXT guys there because right now it's just Adam. I think we might see a couple more here in the near, not so distant future. But I thought this was really well done. I'm with you. I thought it put a little extra buzz on it. How about this other one here? So Dan Lambert, by the way, phenomenal. What an amazing talent Dan Lambert is, Paul. I'll start there.
I find him irritating, but that's his job.
Yeah, he's great old man. He's Vince. He's
it's obvious that he's being positioned in that role.
He's Vince. He may as well start coming out doing the Vince strut. He might here soon. So
that's the way they're presenting him. I mean, that's the character they've given him.
Yeah, Mr. Lambert. So Dan Lambert and Chris Jericho, they're getting in some promo jabs here. And Chris Jericho says to Dan Lambert, "I got into it with a UFC champion Beast a few years ago. A few years before that, I had a shoot fight with an MMA-trained Raging Bill backstage. They didn't kill me. I don't think you can either." Chris kind of played into the backstage altercations he's had with Lesnar and Goldberg. How'd you feel about this one?
I mean, again, like I think that these are all like I think that for the casual fan, they're gonna go right over their head. They're not they won't stand out as glaring like what's he talking about, but they'll go over their heads. But for those who are in the know, those who are avid followers of things like this broadcast, like wrestlinginc.com, where they come and get all these backstage tidbits and insider information. These are Easter eggs that are thrown into an otherwise enjoyable program, to make it a little bit better, a little richer, a little more depth to the storytelling.
Yeah, and Adam Albright, 84 here, saying, I think Dan Lambert is more like Jim Cornette than VKM, and I could see that case. Maybe he comes out with a tennis racket.
Well, I mean, I think that to some degree, yes and no, but I 100% think that his shitting on the company is in a lot of ways intended to be a direct reflection of that. It's an amalgamation of those characters, whether it's Vince McMahon, who's like, taking a dump on it, or it's people like Jim Cornette. Either way, he represents that archetype, and he's doing it rather well.
We talk about possible stars that could be following Adam Cole to AEW. We have an update here on Candice LeRae, whose husband Johnny Gargano's contract we found out is coming up here towards the end of the year. Fightful saying Candice's contract is not like Johnny's. Hers is expiring sometime in 2022. We don't know exactly when, but WWE is not freezing her contract during her pregnancy because she's still working. She's still an on-air character. LeRae mentioned in her pregnancy announcement how she planned to stay on NXT TV for as long as she was allowed, even though she cannot get physical. This new report noted how NXT sources say LeRae insisted that she remain on screen as long as she plausibly could, and that NXT officials have been happy with her performance both in and out of the ring. I don't know why, but this just doesn't seem right or legal to me that you could just pause a contract with an independent contractor because for whatever reason they're unable to perform, and this has happened pretty regularly. That seems super tone deaf and shady to me, Paul.
Well, I mean, that's standard fare. If somebody gets taken off television because they get an injury, for example, it pauses the time that they're supposed to contribute.
That shouldn't be okay either.
I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things that it's in your contract and you agree to it. I don't know. I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong. I do think that, there are certain things that if you get an injury, for example, if you get a work-related injury, if it's because of something that happens at work, then your contract should keep ticking forward. If it's something like, pausing your life to have a baby, then that may be something different altogether. But like, I think that on this note, the only thing I really have to say about it is during that wedding segment on Tuesday, I was like, damn, how fast is she like gestating? She looked like, I remember it seems like yesterday that they announced that she was pregnant, and now she looks ready to go.
Yeah. I just think that, and I see here Daniel Price saying if there's a clause in their contract that says they have to physically perform, then it's perfectly legal. These independent contractor agreements that a lot of these people are being forced to agree to because there is largely a monopoly in the pro wrestling space. It is expanding now with AEW. But like the things that wrestlers are being asked to or forced to agree to in order to work at WWE don't fly under a lot of labor standards that employees that work for companies that have unions and things go by. It's very, very different. So just pointing to the black and white of the contract is not as easy as it sounds. I'll throw in here now, just because I'm all jacked up about it. Andrew Yang, he tweeted out this morning, had a call with the Department of Labor. If you are a current or former WWE performer who feels you were misclassified as an independent contractor, contact Lucas Middlebrook, who's a labor lawyer that he tags here, and let's get you what Vince owes you. Been a long time coming, but this storyline is for real. A fan responded to Yang saying, if I fall into this group, please note that about 2 years ago, Andrew said the same thing. He said if Biden won, he would become labor secretary and fix this. Then he did become labor secretary. He decided to run for mayor of New York and then pulled out of the race. Yang wrote back, 2 years ago, the Department of Labor was managed by someone who was very close to Vince. Times change. The lawyer, Yang, asked wrestlers to contract, like I said, Lucas Middlebrook, who I actually interviewed last year along with Andrew about the quest for unionization amongst pro wrestlers and proper representation. I'm super fascinated this back on the map. I know a lot of people are going to roll their. I mean, I see a lot of eye rolling here. I see a lot of doom and gloom and sourness toward this particular story here, but this kind of tracks with the timeline that I was hoping for. So it's not a letdown to me. With Biden coming in, the National Labor Review Board, which handles a lot of the calls about independent contractors and debates, who is and is not being classified correctly as employees, and when can you do unionization drives and all that type stuff. For the past 4 years before Biden was under the Trump administration, the person who was put in charge of that board was pro-business, anti-employee. There was, of course, the UFC case that Lucas and Andrew worked on. It didn't work out because Dana White had friends on the board and kind of had the whole thing kiboshed. It was super shady. You go read all about it. If there has been a change in leadership at the National Labor Review Board, that changes the game completely. This is like a magic eye. Trump's people look at a labor dispute and they side with the business. A more progressive employee-based National Labor Review Board is going to side with the employees. And if that's the case, Dana White and Vince McMahon, if Joe Biden can get moving here in the next 3 years, because I know this is a priority for him, this could become an actual thing, Paul. Like, I think we could actually see this conversation rile all back up here in the next year or so.
Well, I mean, I think that for most of us who, if you're able to place yourself in the shoes of an individual, like a professional wrestler or just any employee of a company, if you're an independent contractor, that really means that you're working at will. So, contracts would not mean a lot, like meaning if they terminate your your employment, you're an independent contractor, you immediately should be able to go to work somewhere else because that's your job. Number two, it would also mean that you are an independent contractor. So it means they pay you for your performance, and then you have the ability to independently, I'm an independent contractor. I have no obligation to one employer to prevent me from doing anything with any other employer. There may be ethical practices on my own part that I'm like, well, I don't want to do something that would conflict with.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're an independent contractor, you are independently responsible for your own, basically paying your own way, right? And some of the things that WWE requests of their independent contractors, like cutting off other resources or sources of income, such as a Twitch stream or any other thing like that, would fly in the face of that.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's like a 10 or 13 point standard that the National Labor Review Board goes to determine if somebody is misclassified as an independent contractor and should be an employee. Limiting outside opportunities, definitely one of those things that would classify you as an employee, not an independent contractor. But there's also stuff too, are you being required to dress a certain way, right? Like if you go to TGI Fridays and they're telling you have to wear this uniform, well, then you're an employee at TGI Fridays. WWE telling their performers you have to dress a certain way is basically the same thing as having to wear a TGI Fridays polo, right? Is your business, is the place you work providing you resources you need to do your job, or are you having to provide them yourselves? That's another thing that gets into a gray area. So anyway, I'm hoping that next week I'll have a lot more on this. I'm already talking to a lot of people that are involved in it. The misclassification of WWE workers as independent contractors, I fully think will be addressed. And we'll see where it goes. I think there's a good chance we'll see something come of it. I see here, there were a couple comments in here. MCAS, wrestlers too scared to call WWE out on their contracts. The great thing about a unionization effort is, in order to collect the unionization cards you need to get a vote to form a union, is you could do that all in secret. Like, your employer doesn't need to know who on the roster or in the pool of people that are classified as pro wrestlers, or whoever you want to put in the pool of who should be considered misclassified. You can do that all anonymously through a lawyer, collect the right number of cards, and when it goes to the National Labor Review Board, they vote yay or nay if you want to do a public vote or no. So anyway.
Well, I mean, with this situation, I think that, one of the things that presumably will be argued is that nobody is forced to do anything. It's at will, right? So if you want to work here, these are the obligations and requirements. If you don't, that's fine. I think that one of the things that we're seeing definitely dramatically change and shift in the world of professional wrestling is happening, and we talk about it every week, but we don't realize that we're talking about it. And that is that there is a viable alternative that is developing in AEW, which is why so many younger talents have very little interest in going to WWF or WWE rather, and they have much greater interest in going to AEW because of the generations now of feedback that people in the world of professional wrestling have received about how horrendous it can actually be to have your dream come true only to be shelved and have some of the prime years of your career passing you by, you know, because you don't have a story or you're being underutilized or misutilized or in some cases downright abused in the place that was supposed to be your dream job.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about that kind of lost excitement for your love of your dream job, I think that's a nice pivot to ad-free shows. Final pro wrestling interview ever with Jonathan Coachman. This is the last one he says he's ever going to do. I haven't had the chance to listen to it yet or watch it. I really want to. And I've read the highlights. Coachman just unleashes on WWE. Have you seen a lot, like some of what he said or most of what he said, Paul?
I saw snippets. I saw quotes of what he said.
All right. Well, we'll start here. Coachman.
My favorite's the wrestling has left a bad taste in his mouth. The whole industry.
Yeah. And, I had a friend who's a tenured pro wrestling person recently tell me that a veteran told him once, it's hard to leave the pro wrestling business if you spend any amount of time with it with your whole soul intact. The business literally takes a piece of your soul with it, which sadly is, I think, somewhat true. Unfortunately, let's clean this place up. Anyway, so Coachman here, speaking out against WWE, he says that while he probably finds himself deserving, he will never accept a Hall of Fame induction from WWE. He says he's going to be with CBS the rest of his career. He wants to be an executive there. He's proud of the people he's working with, what he's building there. And in what is become probably one of the buzzier comments he made about WWE, he claims that company and the XFL owe him money. He says, I have a very bad taste in my mouth from the sport of wrestling right now. Ultimately, a year ago, when they asked me specifically to come back and do the XFL from January to March, I flew coast to coast. They didn't have the expenses set up because it was a different company. I paid my own expenses between $8,000 and $20,000. I was supposed to be reimbursed later. They bounced a big check to me, and to this day have not paid me. I reached out, and the week after XFL bounced that big check, they cut my contract on the WWE side. He went on to talk about how he thought it was really callous for WWE to be bouncing checks, laying people off during a pandemic where they're doing better business than ever before. Executives are cashing in stocks for millions of dollars. And at another point, mentions how because he refused to go to Afghanistan, there was a segment booked with him and The Undertaker where The Undertaker roughed him up, I think is what he said. So, just a lot, Paul, from Coachman here.
I first and foremost, the thought that a multi-billion-dollar company is bouncing a check for $20,000 is like almost laughable and sad at the same time. Like in the grand scheme of things, $20,000 to WWE is nothing. That's like catering.
They spend more on catering for the 20 grand. Yeah.
Right. But and for even somebody who's a celebrity or, does well for themselves, $20,000 out of your personal finances to do this, like it's the idea of you got to, spend money to make money. Well, he was supposed to be making, number one, this was like something that was supposed to automatically be paid back to him. This wasn't even presumably part of what was expected as earnings. This is what he had to pay out of pocket just to participate, only to have this whole thing scrapped. You got to feel bad for the guy. And this, I think that if I suspect that we would hear more and more stories like this if people, didn't if more people were in a position like Coachman, who is now well established at CBS and doesn't give a shit about what people at WWE think of him.
I think it's sad how many people leave WWE and just have to bite the bullet that you're not going to get closure. they're just not going to give you what you want to feel appreciated or even valued or what you're rightfully owed. Like the fact that fighting WWE and dealing with them is not worth the time it would probably take in court to sue them and recap the $8,000 to $20,000, which for coaches, I'm sure it's a lot of money for anybody, but he's a television personality on CBS Sports, and I'm sure has done well with his money. But
of course,
the fact you would rather just walk away and not deal with them and just push them out of your life. I mean, we've seen it with Punk. We've seen it with Moxley with the whole, they paid me $500 for my last appearance with the Shield kind of stuff. I mean, it's really unfortunate that these guys could just kick you in the dick over and over again, and then you just have to leave, and there's no fighting back.
One of the things that this makes me think of, for those who, the viewers out there who did not see my interview with Chelsea Green a couple of weeks ago, whatever, go check that out. But one of the things that she said, and this was her talking about fighting for the rights to use her actual legal name as a performer, was that she felt very lucky that WWE just decided to give her the victory, she said, because when it comes to things that are legal battles, like even is something like this, taking them to, if you wanted to take them to civil court and be like, hey, you owe me 20 grand, they have all the money in the world to just prolong that stuff, What
I think was funny, so I did an interview with gimmick attorney Mike Dawkins, and I wanted to run it today. I think I actually announced I was going to run it today, but then the Renee stuff happened, and we had to move some stuff around. So I think we'll have gimmick attorney on early next week, maybe Monday or Tuesday. But he was the one that handled Chelsea's trademark case. And I'll throw a little bit of news out there based on the interview. He thinks what happens with Chelsea was that somebody who had really no idea what was going on with the company that just works in their law offices saw she was listed as a wrestler, went and filed it, not knowing she had already been released. And so then somebody came up to that person in clerical and was just like, dude, don't even bother. This has become a headache. You have people in legal filing trademarks on people who have been released for the company because they themselves don't know who has been released because the roster turnover is that fast at the moment, Paul.
And presumably also these are people who are just, clerical workers and or legal workers who probably don't know anything about what's going on other than what actually comes across their desk. They probably have something pop up that's like file trademark for and they just do it. They don't really know because the alternative is that they don't do that stuff and then all of a sudden somebody's non-compete isn't renewed or what kind of thing. So But what basically what I was saying in regards to the idea behind something like the Chelsea Green trademark or something like the Jonathan Coachman situation, when you are an individual, you have to pay money out of pocket to litigate something that if you want to change it, like Coachman would have to litigate to get the money that's already owed to him. And with WWE, they just have a legal team that they're like, just file this. And, they could prolong something like that until, as Chelsea said, they could have prolonged it to the point that she had maxed out any personal money she had to dedicate to that. Same thing. Like all of a sudden you're like, I spent $40,000 to win back $8,000 to $12,000 or $8,000 to $20,000. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I mean, again, going back to Punk, I sat in that courtroom with him and Cabana. And again, we don't know what happened with Punk and Cabana. Maybe it has to do with the court fees. Maybe it doesn't, but I do know they spent a lot of money having to defend themselves against Dr. Aman. And while it was never proven that WWE had Aman's back, it is a lot of money to go through a case like that. And he didn't seem too beat up to me when I was talking to him in the courthouse that he was having to spend all this money on a case that he wound up losing. He seemed really calm, actually. I don't want to call him like a pawn in the game, but he seemed really at ease. He seemed unhappy about what they said and his dignity and all that. But I feel like this could have that particular case probably could have been settled out of court a lot faster had maybe Aman not had resources and people that said, no, we want this to drag out as long as humanly possible. So Cabana and Punk's legal fees go up, because even though Punk and Cabana won that case, I think there's a difference between civil and criminal court, where I think when it's criminal, if you win, then the other people, like the people that sued you, have to pay your expenses or whatever. But that was not the case here with Punk and Cabana. When that case was over, Punk and Cabana were left responsible for all of their own legal fees. I know, I asked about it. So yeah, I watched it firsthand, and I watched what happens when, wrestlers get pulled into court and have to spend tons and tons of money, and it's bad. It wears on them, to say the least.
Well, I mean, it's also an emotional drain.
Oh, hugely emotional drain. Huge emotional drain. The biggest, like the I forget exactly what it was that I said, but Punk and Cabana were waiting outside the courtroom for the verdict to come in. And I was out there, and I didn't know if I should say something to him. And so I walked over and I was like, so, like, how you guys feeling or whatever? And they both just looked at me. And like afterwards, I remember Cabana saying something to me like, hey, we didn't know if we were going to have to lose $20 million right then. Maybe not the best time to come over and like crack a joke or whatever. It was tense, dude. It was very, very serious, obviously, with that much money on the line.
For sure.
Yeah. So, all right, a couple news items here before we get to the mailbag. And of course, we got Renee and Misha on the way if you're in audio form. And in video form, that'll debut in 7 minutes. So we got to wrap this up here kind of quick. Paige took to Twitter yesterday. She tweeted out the word January. Could be anything. Maybe she's coming back, Paul.
Who knows? I mean, I think that a lot of fans would love to see that. I kind of have little limited emotional investment in that. I just want her to be healthy and happy, but I don't know. I'm not looking forward to or turning my nose up to a return if it's.
And the Observer saying here, I think this is the most interesting story of the day. Honestly, I wish we had more time. The Observer saying the NXT commentators were not allowed to say Rick Steiner's name when talking about his son, Braun Breaker. Vic Joseph did get in a line about the dog-faced gremlin, which is a reference to Rick Steiner. But it was noticeable that Brooks Jensen, the son of Bull Buchanan, was referred to as a second-generation star, although Buchanan was also not referred to by name. How do you feel about them not referring to Braun Breaker's actual father, Rick Steiner, during his debut and possibly going forward?
I was reading some stuff about this on Twitter this morning, and I think that it probably wouldn't be we wouldn't think of it as problematic if they had not promoted him as Rick Steiner's son when they acquired him, when they signed him, as they were grooming him. Perhaps they don't want him to come in with the baggage of being a second generation superstar. There's a lot of things there, but we'll have to see it play out. I just thought it was very weird that they did not acknowledge him at all.
You don't think it has anything to do with the fact that his uncle Scott Steiner is completely off the chain when it comes to talking about his dislike for Hulk Hogan and possibly others in WWE?
I think his uncle Scott Steiner is like off his rocker in general. So I don't know that, if WWE is concerned about opening that floodgate, they hired the kid. So that means that Scott Steiner is going to have every eye on him and his mouth just yapping.
Well, and I see here, like Uncle Wally, 83, said they could make bank using that Steiner name, such an incredible legacy. And I think that's the issue here. If they use that Steiner name, I don't know what the trademark is on the Steiner name, who owns it. I mean, the Steiner brothers were the Steiner brothers, correct me if I'm wrong here, Paul, but before they came to WWE, were they not?
Rick Steiner has been Rick Steiner since he was in Mid-South UWF in like 1986, 87. And Scott Steiner, after debuting at the World Wrestling Association up in Detroit as Scott Rex Steiner, began using the Scott Steiner name as soon as he went to NWA WCW.
So there could be cause here from the Steiners to say, we own Steiner. We should divvy this pot up if you want to use the Steiner name.
I think that they would still let their kid do it, probably. But they would. I think the thing is that WWE would never be able to own that name, presumably. You know what I mean? I think that that's a big part of it. I think WWE really, really likes to own the names of the individuals that they create as superstars so that they don't run into a situation of people being able to jump ship and use the name that they've spent money to build up to make money elsewhere.
All right, Paul, I want to thank you for joining me at the top of the show to talk all the news today. I want to thank you to everybody who's been jumping into the comment section here today, like MCASP. I'm 141.75% sure WWE making a mistake not calling him Rex Steiner. Agreed. We've had a great show. Thank you to Renee and Misha for the time. We'll have more coverage out on the site today and going forward out of that conversation. And we'll have even more audio tomorrow. But let's get to it here. The mailbag real quickly, 2 minutes. We probably won't get to a whole lot. If any comments, we'll just talk about the question of the day real quickly. And, of course, the question comes from @Wink Daily, WINC Daily. We are at 1,272 followers now, Paul. And based off of your advice from last week, we're on the way to 1,666 followers by Halloween, so I can have Satan sit in as a special co-host on our Halloween special.
Oh, God. Okay.
Satan. All right. Today's poll question is based off of everything we talked about with Bray Wyatt earlier, how he could be on his way to AEW. Who do you want to see him feud with in AEW? Dark Order, Malachi Black, CM Punk, or somebody else? Over 400 votes. 41.9 Malachi Black, 27.9 Dark Order, 20.3 CM Punk, and only about 10% there for somebody else. Paul, Bray comes to AEW. Who do you want to see him mixing it up with?
Well, we don't have any choice. He's going to feud with Cody. Like, obviously, he's going to come in and face Cody. Who do I want to see him face? I don't even know. I think that sometimes it's great to allow people to come into a company and see what starts to develop organically. And with somebody like him, I think that he will probably have a great deal of input in who he wants to feud with, because he's probably got some great creative ideas around how to build his character based on whatever that individual is.
Yeah, for me, I want Dark Order. I've talked about it a lot. I don't need to rehash it, but I think him, Braun, and Rowan showing up in Rochester, Brody Lee's backyard to confront the Dark Order, that's a story that writes itself. If everybody can play ball, that's where I started off, Paul. And you got months worth of booking you could do with those two entities.
Yeah, but at the same time, right now, Dark Order's in such disarray. Would they have to come back together? Would they have to reunite to face, the Wyatt family or the Wyndham family?
That's the question, right? Are there defectors, right? But that's the thing, is there's already questions and intrigue about these entities. I think you can play around with that, Paul.
I'm just gonna strongly disagree here. I mean, I think that yes, that story I think is fantastic, but I'm gonna disagree based on one thing. The Dark Order, without like somebody who's a focal point as a real leader of this group over the last year, that since Brody's death, has fallen in really, really fallen in its kind of like luster. There was never any body who was a secondary level. Evil Uno lost a lot of his shine. I love him as a character. I love John Silver as a character, but they feel like a group of basically lower mid-carders, whereas the others coming in would be main event stars from Go.
All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up here for today. Thank you, Paul, once again, and to Renee and to Misha. I am at Nick_Hausman on Twitter. Tomorrow we'll be back. Double dose of audio to wrap the week up. We're going to have Brian Wool's SummerSlam conversation with Bobby Lashley. We're also going to have my conversation with It's Still Real to Me, damn it, Dave Wills, the man from the meme, in the house, talking about what brought him to tears at that convention years ago. Paul, I see you chortling right now. I see a little chortle.
He was at GCW a couple of weeks ago, and he was spent all his time with everybody. There's so many people were there oh my God, It's Still Real to Me, damn it, guy. And that's the Brock Lesnar guy. Oh my God, they're hanging out together. And I was like, okay, don't mean nothing to me.
Okay, well, Dave's here tomorrow, and it's an older interview I've been sitting on just for the right time, but it's time to get it out there, me and Dave. If you like the Wrestling Inc. Daily, support WrestlingInc.com, all the socials, Wrestling Podcast at night, just like this. You can subscribe on podcast platforms as well. And, of course, if you're in town here in the Chicagoland area, Monday, October 4th, come join me at Replay Lincoln Park for my official WWE draft party. WWE is hooking me up with tons and tons of merchandise to give away for free. The event is free. Arcades are free. You got to pay for beer, but I think we're doing $3 drafts. So a hell of a deal. Come on out October 4th. Paul, what do you want to put over here to wrap up the show today?
Hey, I am basically, first of all, I just want to give a shout out wearing my Bud Marco Mania's Sexy Time t-shirt. It's available. Tank top's available. But follow me on Twitch. I've really been growing a nice following on Twitch. It's Twitch at, Pollo Del Mar, POLLODELMAR. We watch a lot of old school wrestling on there. We love it. Jump on over there. And also follow me on Twitter. That's a big deal for me right now. I'm pushing towards 8,700 or something like that followers. and I just love to interact with people who watch the show and love wrestling.
Awesome. Like I said, I'm at Nick_Houseman. Thank you for tuning in. Jump over to my interview with Renee and Misha Tate. It's premiering right now on Wrestling Inc.'s YouTube channel. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked, you didn't miss it.